Welcome to another paddle roundup where I'm talking through a variety of pickleball paddles that I've been playing with in the last month or so. In this episode, I tested a total of 12 different paddles, all different shapes, core sizes, and materials. And these can be paddles that haven't come out yet, maybe just recently released, or old favorites that have worked their way back into my rotation. And at the end, I'll be picking a winner of the bunch. And I'll tell you now, the winner of this episode had a ton of competition, but ultimately took the crown because of how much it surprised me in a few different areas. So I've got a stack of paddles sitting next to me. All of them are listed on screen here. Let's get into another paddle roundup. Starting out, we've got the CRBN Trufoam Genesis 2, and this is the paddle that I would consider to be my main at this point, and it has pretty much been since its release. Stats are on the screen for the TF2, but know that it does come in other shapes as well, the TF1 and the TF3. And the thing about this paddle is that it's just different. It's a foam core paddle, and we've seen more and more foam cores since the Trufoam release, but nothing, in my opinion, that has matched the Trufoam to this point. It hits hard, but has this dense, controllable feel to it, and I absolutely love that. It features a square of fiberglass on the sweet spot that takes a little bit to get used to, but once you understand how it works, it's a setup that I've really enjoyed. My decision to go with the TF2 as opposed to the other shapes really came down to the swing weights, as the swing weights are on the high side when you're looking at the stock. So I went with the lower swing weight of the TF2, and then that gave me room to add some weight and really customize my setup. You can see I've got weight on each side here. I do have a whole in-depth video you can watch on the Trufoams, but I've been seeing more and more of these on the courts. I really love to see that, as I think it's a fantastic paddle. Up next, we have the Paddletek TKO-CX and ALW-Cs. Stats are on the screen, and these are not new paddles. So they came out a little under a year ago, but I still think they are something special, and I feel like they have a unique feel to them. All of these are Gen 1 builds, which has pros and cons, but one of the main pros is that there's just less to kind of go wrong, so the paddle should last a long time. Now they each have a 14.3 millimeter version and a 12.7 millimeter version. They offer slight variations within the paddle, and they actually offer you some input on the stock weight when you purchase it as well, which is pretty cool. So starting with the TKO-CX, which is essentially the long handle version of the TKO-C. This has a crisp feel off the face, plenty of power, and top tier pop. I found myself drawn to the 14.3 millimeter version of this paddle. I think it's probably because it plays the most similarly to a lot of paddles that I've been playing with. This version is still poppy, but it has a bit better control and a bit better sweet spot, which was easier for me to adjust to than the 12.7 millimeter. And the reality is the biggest drawback of these paddles is the smaller sweet spot, especially in stock form. It's just not going to give the same size sweet spot in a Gen 1 build, and I think for that reason, again, I was drawn to the slightly better sweet spot and forgiveness of the 14.3 millimeter. However, depending which version you go with, and if you choose the TKO-CX or the TKO-C, there is some room potentially to add a little weight and help with that sweet spot. And if sweet spot is one of your bigger factors in your paddle decision, then you can also consider the Paddletek ALW-C, which is similar to the TKO in a lot of ways. It is incredibly poppy, and it's a unique, fun, powerful paddle to play with. The more standard shape gives you a slightly better sweet spot, and the design as a whole comes in at an incredibly low swing weight. I was drawn to the 12.7 millimeter ALW-C, I think mainly because it just feels like such a quick and unique feeling paddle, and it hits super hard. And that super low swing weight allows you to add a ton of weight if you like in order to really customize the paddle how you want. So if I were in the market for one of these and I was deciding between the many different options, I would personally lean the 12.7 millimeter if you're a more aggressive player and don't rely as much on your soft game, and go 14.3 millimeters if you are looking for what is still a very poppy, powerful paddle, but you don't want to sacrifice quite as much of that stability and sweet spot. Now between the two shapes, I think if you prefer an elongated shape or a heavier paddle and are okay with a smaller sweet spot, I would go TKO. And if you prefer a standard shape and you like a light paddle or want a ton of room to customize, or need to keep a little more of that sweet spot, then the ALW-C is for you. Next, we have the Vatic Saga 14mm, which comes in the elongated V7 shape, the hybrid flash, and the standard bloom. And there are also long handle options for the V7 and the Flash as well. These just recently released, and I have an entire in-depth review that I'd recommend checking out. But for that review, I had primarily played with the V7 and the Flash short handle versions. So for this section, I wanted to focus on the Bloom. Stats are on the screen, and I really enjoyed this entire lineup. I had great things to say about the V7 and the Flash in my full review, and I gotta say, I might like the Bloom even more. This is in itself surprising because I have traditionally not been drawn to standard shapes, but I did like the CRBN Trufoam 2, and now I like the Vatic Bloom, so I don't know, maybe I'm having an identity crisis, but it's just a great paddle. The 14mm version delivers good power and some great pop, and it shaves down the swing weights a little bit, making you faster at the net. The Bloom specifically is extra quick in the hands and very stable, and I actually love this paddle in its stock form. Now, I might mess around with weight down the road, I'll be sure to report back if I do, but this is an easy paddle to pick up and enjoy. Compared to the V7 and the Flash, while I sometimes missed the reach just a little bit, the stability trade-off was just really nice, and I felt like I could lean into a more defensive game while still being aggressive when I needed to be. Plus, at a price point of just $119 after code, it's just really hard to beat how much paddle you're getting for that price. Next up is the Diadem Infinity Icon Pro and the Max, and this is an odd one for me. I'm gonna be honest, my first time playing with these edgeless paddles, I really did not enjoy the Pro, and while I thought the Max was better, I wasn't entirely sold on it. I actually took them out of my bag for a bit of time just to kind of reset, knowing that I'd come back to them and try them again. So I took them back out in a drilling session and some skinny singles, and I actually found my preference to kind of switch on these. So I felt I played better and was much more consistent with the Icon Pro than I was with the Max, which I was struggling with at that time. Now, I'm not often drawn to edgeless paddles, and the Icon Infinities do technically have a removable thin edge guard, which is actually a unique little feature, but for all intents and purposes, I would consider this to be edgeless. I think the pro of an Icon Pro is that you get that elongated shape in a relatively low swing weight due to its thinner core and essentially edgeless design. So it's definitely built for people who prioritize hand speed and like an edgeless paddle and also an elongated paddle. It felt very whippy and quick to me, and I definitely enjoyed that aspect. The paddle feels a bit more hollow and thin, which is often in line with edgeless paddles. But if you're somebody who likes that edgeless feel and is used to that, I could see this being an option to consider, as you'll get that feel, but you'll have a bit of additional stability than some pure edgeless paddles, thanks to its thin detachable edge guard. Now, maybe I was having a weird day, but I think it's worth mentioning that I actually found more power with the Max than I did in the Pro, which I didn't expect. And a lot of my problems when playing with the Max were sending the ball long, and I think some of that has to do with how head heavy I felt this paddle to be. The other thing with these is that the grit is spray on, which I don't love. It's not to say the spin is bad, but more so that similar to other paddles that use spray on grit like some Selkirks, it will usually wear out more quickly. And finally, these aren't new paddles, just new to me. And they are still priced at $220 before code, which I feel is a little on the expensive side. But Diadem has something on the horizon, their new Blucore lineup, which I have not been hands-on with yet, but I expect to be soon. And I think these might be the direction that I would point people. They are launching 3 different shapes, each of which will have 3 core sizes available, 14, 16, and 19 millimeters. So it seems they are doing a great job at providing something for everybody. Now, in my other discussions with other reviewers, it's been hard to get a solid comprehensive review, as most people right now only have 2 of these 9 paddles. So it's a bit like completing a puzzle without having all the pieces, so to speak. But suffice to say, I like the approach they're taking here, as I think it lends itself to make a lot more people happy. I'm excited to see another foam core on the market, and I think that for sure some of these Blucores are going to be really solid paddles that the market responds very well to. Now we have the Standout CF4, and this paddle surprised me a bit because it really just kind of came out of nowhere. The first time I saw this was when I was drilling with Matt from Matt's Pickleball, and I actually didn't recognize the brand at the time, but eventually I got my hands on one, and from the start, I just enjoyed it. It's one of those paddles that, at least for me, just felt easy, like I'd be switching around between different paddles, and I always looked forward to when this was back on top of the pile. I felt like this paddle had great power and pop, and I think some of that comes from how quick it feels in your hands despite being an elongated shape. The swing weight isn't too high for an elongated paddle, but it also doesn't feel head heavy, which can sometimes be the case. Additionally, with its decent twist weight and slightly softer feel, it's also a very consistent and stable paddle option that lends itself well to a soft game. On bigger swings, it definitely felt like it could add something a little extra, and it features a narrow cell polypropylene core, which gives it lots of consistency across the entire paddle face. And to top it off, has a very generous sweet spot. Up next, we have the Franklin C45, and this was another paddle that took some time for me to get used to, but has really grown on me and now has a permanent place, at least for now, in my bag. I have an entire full review that you can watch, but to sum it up, the Franklin C45 is an incredibly lightweight, poppy, and powerful paddle that is a lot of fun to play with. And I wouldn't go so far as to say it absolutely needs weight added, I'm sure you've heard that, but I do think that adding weight is what really unlocks the best parts of this paddle. I preferred it with about 9 grams of weight total on the paddle across the edges and up top, and I was willing to give up some of that hand speed to really amplify this paddle in all the other categories. And I think Franklin had this in mind in the design, as the stock swing weight is just so low that you have tons of room to customize the paddle with weight and still end up with a low swing weight, quick feeling paddle. The feel off the face is on the stiffer side, but it feels crisp and responsive. And while it is a poppy paddle, I felt like once I adjusted to the paddle, I always had a pretty good idea of how the ball was going to come off the face. This is still a paddle that I reach for because it's just fun to play with and is something a bit different in a sea of similarity. One of the concerns with the Franklin was some quality control things that I go more into in depth in my full review video, so make sure you check that out if you want to get more there. So, which one of these paddles takes the crown for this paddle roundup episode? I gotta admit, this episode was pretty heavily contested, and we had a lot of great paddles in the lineup, but the winner for this video is the Vatic Saga 14mm Bloom, and let me tell you why. Now, you already heard all about this great paddle, and I want to be upfront that if I was going to a tournament tomorrow, I would still be using the CRBN Trufoam Genesis 2, but I'm giving the nod to the Vatic for 2 reasons. First is how much I was surprised by this paddle. I did not expect it to be bad by any means, but I've just been really wowed by it. I felt very consistent. And to take it a step further, it's another rare paddle where I really enjoyed the standard shape, though I enjoyed the other shapes as well. And second is that when price comes into play, it's so hard to beat something like this. It's stable, quick, fun to play with, and I still feel like I can be aggressive with it. And to get all of that at a price point of $120 after code and backed by a company with a good reputation, I think this paddle is well deserving of the title today. Let me know if there are other paddles that you'd like to see make an appearance in these paddle roundup videos. If you found this video helpful, consider subscribing. And if you're planning to purchase any of these paddles, know that using the code Pickleball Blast goes a long way to help out this channel. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.